Hey everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Blockchain Banter. I'm Jen, and I'm here with Dr. Sophie Liu, data scientist at AgenFi, and Dr. Mark Richardson, project lead at Carbon and Bancor. Welcome back, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Um, we're going to be discussing MEV and its subsets, specifically OEV, or Oracle Extractable Value. Sophie, I would love for you to start us off. We mentioned this last week a little bit on our previous call, but the more I look into OEV, the less I feel like I understand. And so I would love for you to give us a simple, right, high level as we can, just to start before we kind of dig in a little bit to the different categories and um, just a little bit deeper into OEV.
Okay, no problem. Hi, Jen. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here to have this discussion again with everyone. I just got back from ETHCC like 2 weeks ago, and MEV is definitely a hot topic this year. So hopefully today that I could share some information about MEV and especially about the OEV. So Jen has asked me the question, what is the OEV? And as you know, it refers to the Oracle extractable value. But why there's a value that could be extracted from Oracle? That is a question that everyone may be interested in. But if you want to know about like OEV, we can step back and understand what is MEV first, right? So then you can understand why there's a new MEV trend called OEV. So MEV often refers to the actual value that could be extracted from the on-chain transactions. Then here comes the question: why there's value that could be extracted? So where is this value comes from? So that is because if you're trading DeFi, I think everyone here must be familiar with one word that is slippage. So it is originated from the nature of AMM. And every time if you make a trade, the pool's price will be updated. So based on the trading volumes of the last transaction. So the arbitrageurs could use the price difference between the multiple pools to buy some tokens at a low price and then sell it in another pool at a high price and then generate a profit. That is what we normally call as arbitrage. And if the transaction has been noticed by like some sandwich attacker, then this sandwich attacker will insert a front-run transaction to buy the token at a better price just before the victim, and then sell it back after the victim transaction to backrun to generate a profit. So I just introduced the two typical MEV type, arbitrage and sandwich attack. That is what we call the MEV, extract the value from on-chain transactions. So now let's talk about what is OEV. So as we know, it's extracted from the Oracle, but how could you extract value from Oracle? The most common cases that is for OEV is another MEV type that we have identified, that is liquidations. If I could like introduce the liquidation transaction later, but for a liquidation transaction, the most important thing is when the liquidation is triggered. So the liquidators could come to conduct liquidation transactions and like at the first place and before other transactions, so they can get to the better price and timely. But the most important part is the liquidation is triggered when the Oracle's price is updated. So you can notice that for the recent liquidation transaction, the most recent trends that happens for these liquidation bots happened is they normally would backrun Oracle's update transaction. So like for Chainlink, if they want to update the Oracle's price, they will send a transaction they will send a transaction to update the price. And this transaction goes to a mempool and be recognized by the liquidation bots. So the liquidation bots would do is to backrun this Oracle update transaction, put them in the bundle and send them to the builders and give the builder many tips to ensure that their bundle could be included in the block. So that is normally what the liquidation bots will do recently to extract the value by liquidation from the oracle's update. So yeah, this is my understanding of this is just like some introduction about what is OEV and what is MEV. So I hope like Mark could add some more concepts about what's your understanding about OEV.
Yeah, certainly. It's a pleasure to be on a call again with you, Sophie. I always like the spaces we do together. But yeah, I think Sophie's overview of the topic is a good one. I think the thing that I can add to that description is to remind everyone that an oracle is not sort of a magical piece of technology, and that in general we assume oracles to be a part of the deterministic state of the blockchain. And what I mean by that is that every time that there is a system that's reliant on an oracle, in general, it requires someone to push that oracle update to update a value inside the contract that's dependent on that oracle. And so, in a way, the oracle update is already a part of a transaction. So if anyone is familiar with how front running and back running works in an AMM context, you can consider an oracle update to just be another sort of subset of exactly the same concept. Because if you can see that an oracle update is going to be pushed, then as a block builder, you still have the benefit of being able to decide where inside the block that oracle update is going to be included. And that means that you can do things, for example, before the oracle updates, and then include the oracle update in the next slot, and then perform more actions after the oracle update is completed. So you can sandwich an oracle update in exactly the same way you can sandwich anything else. So really, it's just another component of mechanisms, I think, or I hope that the industry is fairly well aware of.
Thank you guys so much for the introduction to it. Sophie, you had mentioned arbitrage as a type of MEV, and I think it's probably the most popular type of MEV alongside sandwich attacks that you had mentioned. But then you also say, like, I was looking at a recent tweet from AgenFi, and it has arbitrage as one of the main categories of OEV. Maybe we can jump into the three different types or the three different categories that we have listed. It's arbitrage, liquidations we spoke to, just a little bit. Maybe we can dig in a little bit more. And then direct oracle attacks. Because we had spoken about MEV as our introduction and arbitrage, maybe we can start there.
Okay, no problem. So let's clarify about whether you think arbitrage is OEV. So the importance of how you classify whether a transaction is OEV is whether there's like any oracle manipulation, oracle front run, oracle back run, and maybe just oracle sandwiches. Right, so like for a normal arbitrage, if there's like no oracle included in the transaction, then we wouldn't refer to this kind of atomic arbitrage as OEV. But if in a liquidation, so this comes to how you define a liquidation. I'm not sure like if everyone here understand what the liquidation transaction is, but I want to give an example. So I'm going to use Mark as example. Like if Mark needs to use some ETH for trading, but he has like a bunch of CRV at hand, but he trades his CRV token a lot, and he don't want to sell them to exchange for ETH. Then the way he would do is to maybe go to the RV to deposit his CRV token and borrow out the ETH. But there's some day that the CRV price just declined very quickly, and then triggered. So the collateral assets that Mark deposited in the RV couldn't cover the value that he borrowed out. Then it will trigger the liquidation. So as a liquidator, I become the liquidator if then what I would do is to help Mark to pay the debt assets of ETH and then get the collateral assets of the CRV. The most important of liquidation part is the time. So if you go to your liquidation transaction is just happened just after the Oracle's price got updated, that means most of the time you got the price that you got, you pay the ETH and you got the CRV. It's mostly like you were trying to buy the CRV using the ETH, right? So the price is much better if you could conduct this liquidation very quickly. And then most of the time when you got the CRV and you don't want to hold it, you still want to hold ETH, then you will find the market, maybe some on the DEX, or maybe even go to the SAX, go to the CFI to sell the CRV to exchange back to the ETH and then do the arbitrage to gain the profit. This whole process includes liquidation part, that is help to repay the debt and get the collateral assets, and also include the arbitrage process. You sell, you get the collateral assets in a better price, and you want to sell it in the market to generate a profit, and then you return back with only the ETH token that you want. So that's like how a typical liquidation will looks like, and you include the liquidation part and also includes arbitrage part. But this kind of the transaction we would refers to as the OEV. So that's the one thing that I want to clarify here.
Thank you so much for clarifying. It definitely makes it a lot clearer to kind of distinguish between the two. The main difference just being whether or not the Oracle is actually included in that. Really quickly, I just want to remind everybody, normally I say this in the beginning of the call, if any one of our listeners has any questions for Mark or Sophie, please don't hesitate to put your hands up and to join here up on stage and to like and retweet the announcement and let everyone know, we are talking about OEV and kind of getting into the nitty gritty a little bit here. Mark, before I continue, I don't know if you wanted to add to the clarification at all with liquidations and arbitrage.
Yeah, certainly. So, I think Sophie did a very good job summarizing it. So again, I don't have too much to add, but maybe I can try and bring a different perspective on liquidations and one that's a little bit closer to home. You can think of liquidations as being akin to foreclosing on something. So, for example, imagine that I've borrowed a very large amount of money from the bank in order to buy a house with, right? So I'm effectively signing a mortgage. Now, the way that risk management works in traditional mortgage markets is generally, as long as you've got the means to continue paying the principal or at least the interest on the loan, the bank won't foreclose on you, regardless of what happens to the house price. But in a cryptocurrency context, loans have to be there's a lot less information that lending protocols have access to. So, for example, if you have taken out a huge loan on CRV in the example that Sophie has raised, and I think rather topically, the information that the protocol has with respect to the person that has taken that loan is basically nothing. All it knows is that it's got this amount of CRV and the person has borrowed X amount of cash against it. And so from the lending protocol's perspective, and coming back to the bank's perspective, if it didn't know that I wasn't gainfully employed, then if the housing market started to move down, then the bank is going to be worried that if it has to foreclose and recover the money that I've borrowed, it has to basically seize that house and then sell it on the market at auction. And this is something that I assume a lot of people on this call have witnessed before. The 2008 housing crisis in the United States wasn't that long ago, and the reason why there was so much bad debt accumulating is because the housing prices during that period were just like ridiculously overstated. And so the amount that the major banks were able to actually recover from selling those houses was nowhere near the amount of money that was borrowed against them. But that is akin to a liquidation, right? It's when the lender is forced to seize the collateral and then sell it in order to recover the debt. In a lending protocol's case, in the example that we're exploring here with CRV, the only thing that it has access to is the current price of that CRV, and this has to be delivered via an oracle. And this can be either an off-chain oracle or something that aggregates off-chain data, such as Chainlink, or it can be an entirely on-chain oracle, which would be essentially reading the smart contracts of AMMs in order to determine the current price of that CRV. And so once the price gets to a certain level, a liquidation is triggered, which essentially means that there will be an event that allows anyone to buy that collateral from the lending protocol in an attempt for that protocol to recover the debt. And so what this means is, and unlike the housing and bank situation, you can actually see, if you're a block builder, that that event is about to be triggered. And so if you know what the collateral there is worth, then you can actually, you can put that trigger event inside the block and then immediately purchase that collateral for whatever price the protocol is asking for. And if there's no one else bidding against you in that auction, then you can get it at essentially whatever price you want. But then, like Sophie said, the liquidator seldom wants those tokens that they purchased. So if they buy, the CRV from the lending protocol, let's say for $1 million, then they are motivated immediately to turn around and try and sell that CRV for at least $1 million. If they only sell it for what they bought it for, then it's completely zero sum, and there was really no point in being a part of that process. And so what they're going to try and do is sell it for a profit, right? Anything that they can get on top of $1 million minus whatever the gas is for performing these actions is essentially the financial reason for them to be doing it. And so you're in a privileged position if you know that liquidation is going to be triggered because you can see it like floating around in the mempool and you're about to be incorporated into your block. Then you can be the first to act. And more than that, you can also see all of the state of other liquidity pools. And so if you see a whole bunch of CRV that's, about to be traded, then you can actually liquidate that loan and then use the CRV that you've accumulated from the lending protocol to then perform, front runs against other users who are attempting to sell CRV in the same block and get a better price. And you could even use that to try and trigger another liquidation, and then in the next block you can have a similar advantage, and you can cascade this process essentially to your benefit, so long as the liquidity doesn't run dry. But yeah, that's kind of the high and low of it. It's just about being the first to notice or the first to know that a liquidation is going to be triggered because that transaction is floating around and you're about to incorporate it into your block, and then asking the question, how can I best use that to my advantage? And in general, it's at the expense of the person who's being liquidated, and also at the expense of other people who may be front run as a result of the liquidation occurring.
So when you're saying it's at the expense of someone, I mean, this is kind of where like you're extracting this value. You're extracting it from someone. But Sophie, recently, and this is kind of where I'm stuck, and I'm hoping we can clarify a little bit. I know you recently participated, you were a panelist on a discussion with the positive impact of OEV. What are the actual positive impacts of OEV? When you're extracting value, where does that come from?
I think like for a normal liquidation, why a normal liquidation needs to happen is to protect the protocols, right? Someone deposited some tokens, and they borrow out the assets. But like in traditional market, there's some like the person who is borrowing the assets, and then if this person didn't want to repay the debt, and then you can chase on them. But on blockchain, everything is happened from the EOA address, and there's no chasing if someone didn't want to repay their debt, and how to protect the protocols. Then, as Mark has just said, most of the protocols will use you need to how to say, like, over collateral. You need to, if you want to borrow out like the CRE, if you want to deposit CRE token, you will need to you only can borrow out like let's say maybe 90% value of the CRV of equal like the same value of the ETH. So that's how the protocols used to protect their positions. And if the CRV's price declines very quickly, they need to make sure this collateral is not a bad debt. So a normal liquidation needs to happen. So the protocols could protect the like also the normal market makers positions as well. So that's, I think, it's a positive part of the OEV. It's the normal liquidation needs to happen. It's a market nature, and it's happened for the protection of the protocols. So that's why that's the part that I think you mentioned about this positive part of the OEV.
I think, yeah, there's nothing nefarious about a liquidation, right? Like Sophie said, it's a completely normal part of the market and the risk management of the lending protocols, and it is necessary that the lending protocols try to restrict or limit, or if they can get away with it, completely prohibit the accumulation of bad debt. But at the same time, that also means that this necessary market influence is going to represent an opportunity for someone. And where liquidations can move from being a completely natural expression of risk management to being something that I think is malicious in nature is when the oracle that is triggering a liquidation is an on-chain one, and something that can be subject to easy manipulation. And so this is, we've seen this play out so many times now. I think, Cream was one of the, I think one of the worst affected lending protocols via this specific manipulation technique. But essentially, if you are able to take, for example, a flash loan and move the price on an AMM pool for some token way off kilt, then it's possible to trigger a liquidation when one isn't necessarily justified. So if the true market price, whatever that means, is somewhere else compared to what the AMM is quoting, then you might liquidate someone prematurely, or even liquidate someone who is nowhere near needing to be liquidated. And I think this is one of the earliest and most successful exploit vectors for lending protocols in general. This is also why a lot of lending protocols are now reliant on Chainlink, which has access to off-chain off-chain price data and isn't necessarily reliant on AMM price quotes, which makes these kinds of exploits not impossible to achieve, but much more difficult to achieve. So yeah, it's important to, I think, categorize these two different liquidation types. There's the first one, which is completely normal and healthy, and yeah, it sucks if you're the person being liquidated, but the protocol needs to defend the lenders. And then there's the second case, which is that someone's being liquidated when they didn't necessarily have to be, and it's because someone is maliciously tricking the lending protocol into liquidating them.
I think you mentioned Chainlink. I think they were actually crediting Chainlink. I think Curve recently dipped way down. There was a wick way down, and because Aave uses Chainlink, I want to say that that liquidation couldn't have occurred with CRV. So I think that might be one of those examples that you're speaking to right now by using that off-chain price data versus strictly the AMMs.
Yeah, so it's so because Aave uses Chainlink, and because Chainlink has access to a much more diverse source of price feeds, it's very difficult for someone to artificially move the price of CRV down. But in this particular case, I don't think it really matters because the price capitulation on CRV was kind of market wide. Sure, like there may have been some like it may have been more extreme in the AMMs, but I don't think, in this particular case, the risk that Aave was approaching with respect to that $30 million CRV loan being liquidated, it was approaching that regardless of the price sources, and I think this was mostly off of the heels of the exploit that occurred as a result of the Viper 0-day exploit. So even once the market has lost confidence in a token or is panicking because of an exploit or something like that, it really doesn't matter where you're getting your prices from, off chain, on chain. The price of CRV was diving no matter what. It could be. I haven't actually looked at it. It could be that it was more dramatic on chain, but I'd be surprised if it was if it was markedly more dramatic.
So we spoke a little bit about arbitrage liquidations, direct Oracle attacks. I think Euler was another one that we just recently saw. That was this year. I think that was a direct Oracle attack. Speaking of, I know you use Cream as an example, but I think that one was pretty much the majority of the first quarter this year, what I read.
The Euler exploit is devastating.
Yeah, I think like 200 something million. Okay, so then I was also reading and I saw some people suggesting that OEV might actually incentivize oracles to update their asset prices more or less frequently than a protocol intends. This would protect against the liquidations, like the unnecessary liquidations. Sophie, maybe you wouldn't mind jumping in.
There's a chance that if this Oracle update got backfired very frequently, some positions could be over liquidated. What I mean over liquidated is maybe that depends on how frequent the Oracle update the price. Maybe there's like a sharp decline, but the price go back to normal very quickly. But the Oracle update the price after the sharp decline, and then there's some liquidation should be triggered, and then there's so the Oracle send out the update transaction and be found immediately by a liquidator, and then the liquidator comes to liquidate the position, but the price got back very quickly. But that means this position should be liquidated, but still, because of the Oracle's background from the liquidators, this position got liquidated. That could cause some loss from the borrower. So that's a case that I could think of. This maybe some cases if it's possible that the position could be over liquidated in this kind of case.
Yeah, so there's always, I'd say, like a trend or like I don't know what to call it. It's a sort of an overconfidence in this idea of a low latency oracle. And in some applications, sure, like low latency oracles are extremely important. But in general, for like for lending markets, there's kind of a correct amount of latency. What I mean by that is that exactly what Sophie said. It's sometimes the price is moving around very, very quickly, and so you might find that on a bad day there's like a very sudden wick down. And if your oracle is like oversensitive, then it might trigger a liquidation for like no good reason. In a way, it becomes a part of whatever that panic sell is, and that might only last a block or two, and then sort of the market returns to normal. In which case, someone would have been, you know, liquidated for no good reason. This is, by the way, like one of the innovations behind Curve's lending protocol, where you can be liquidated and then unliquidated if the price kind of returns afterwards. And this has been, you know, I've noticed a couple of people sort of stress testing that system, and it seems to be working quite well. So yeah, you know, the whole idea of the price oracle and lending is it's kind of weird, because what you're trying to guess is how much am I likely to be able to sell this collateral for, and there's really no way to know that ahead of time, right? The oracle, even if its price feed is like 100% accurate, even if you're getting it from the best market makers, you know, through the best oracle, and it's being delivered, you know, every block, you still don't really know what someone's going to buy that collateral for. So at the end of the day, what these oracles are delivering is just the best guess. And so, you know, the fact that it's being delivered at, you know, a much higher frequency or to more decimal places or whatever is kind of irrelevant, because it still doesn't help you determine the future, which is when you go to auction, what are liquidators going to buy that collateral for? It's in that moment where the liquidator auction ends and you actually sell the collateral. That's when you truly discover the market price for that second. And sure, the market might move afterwards, it might have moved before or whatever. But having a faster, more sensitive oracle doesn't actually help you learn what the actual auction price is going to be. So yeah, I would say that it's something that it clearly isn't very well understood by DeFi, but they'll, you know, we're all learning the hard way.
Sophie, you unmuted there for a minute. Did you want to add to what Mark was saying?
Oh, I think no, I just like accidentally unmuted.
Okay. Mark, you mentioned, and Sophie, you did earlier also, Oracle-less protocols, and this was something that we had spoken about last week. Do you think, I mean, we're obviously seeing more of them, right? Do you think this is the way that the industry is really headed, or do you think it's going to be, you know, faster, more reliable oracles and more of them? I'd like to hope it's one of the two, because it's obviously a huge problem in DeFi at the moment, and really has been for quite some time now. Do we see more Oracle-less protocols and Oracle-less lending protocols?
I'm happy to have a shot at this one. There are going to be some aspects to systems on DeFi that are always going to be dependent on an oracle, but it's out of necessity, right? There's nothing about having an oracle a part of your system that means that you should be proud of that system. The holy grail is to not have any dependencies other than what is already included in your system design. And so reliance on an oracle is kind of conceding that your system is not self-reliant. And, you know, any oracle system, no matter how robust, is still going to suffer from, you know, the inaccuracies that I was alluding to before, right? You can deliver, you know, 100 decimal places of precision and, you know, with microsecond resolution, but it still doesn't, you know, help my protocol learn what you know, what I'm going to be liquidated for example. I think there are some very obvious exceptions to this. So things like perpetual protocols, anything that's trading perpetual futures, because it doesn't actually, you know, it's not real liquidity. You know, it's basically betting on what the oracle is going to say, right? It's kind of like a horse race or something in that regard. It doesn't really matter what something will sell for or not, because you're never in the position where you have to actually buy or sell anything. But yeah, when it comes to evaluating actual resources like CRV in a lending protocol, then the Oracle component is a weakness. And I don't mean that in the sense that the Oracle is unreliable or hasn't been built correctly or whatever. It just means that there is an aspect to your system that's now unpredictable because it's relying on information that it doesn't already have access to. It's a dependency issue. It's it adds another layer of unknowns. So it kind of adds to the opaqueness or the the infidelity of the system and makes it less deterministic. So I think that's kind of the underlying justification for trying to develop Oracle-less protocols. They are, by definition, more predictable. They can be much easier characterized, and they are, they don't have those dependencies. So, if you can define a system of smart contracts that's able to operate without requiring someone else to like assist that thing, then that's clearly better. You only really want to be reliant on systems that you have no control over as an absolute last resort.
Now, Mark, maybe you wouldn't mind taking a minute because Carbon does not have an oracle. Right. So this sort of oracle manipulation, the reliance that you're speaking about right now, that's not a part of Carbon. We spoke about lending protocols. Maybe we can speak about trading protocols and specifically Carbon and how that was designed to not have that sort of third party reliance.
I think trading protocols don't really need oracles. Like I said before, there are what we call perpetual futures protocols, things like GMX. But like you're not really trading anything. You're just betting on the price that the Oracle delivers. And so, yeah, because there's no real exchange of actual, tokens between users, it requires an Oracle. But for actual trading, the only thing that matters is the price that someone is trying to sell something for and the price that someone is trying to buy something for. And so, yeah, there's no need to refer to an external market. You can conduct those types of transactions, entirely in a vacuum. And there's just, it's just the motives and market perspectives of the people that are participating in that transaction that provide all of the information required. So, for example, one of the we spoke about arbitrage, earlier in the conversation and how that might relate to Oracle extractable value. But you don't actually need an Oracle system because the human who is performing that transaction is a type of oracle. So an oracle is an old term that just means to introduce information into a system that it doesn't have access to. And so if you are motivated to do something because you have that information, then you become the oracle. So, for example, if I know that the price of ETH is around $2,000 and I go to an AMM and I see that ETH is currently selling for $1,500, I can just buy that ETH, right? Like if I'm shopping around to try and find the cheapest ETH that I can, the decision to buy ETH at 1,500 because I know that it's around $2,000 is me acting as an oracle and performing a type of arbitrage trade. Now I could be mistaken. It could be that ETH has actually capitulated very sharply and it's now around 1,500 or whatever. But Oracle systems can struggle with that kind of misinformation as well. But the point is that when someone is acting on information that they have, or on knowledge that they have, or on a suspicion that they have, or whatever, then that's the only oracle that's required. You don't need something to sort of approve a price for you, right? You just need to you just need to agree to take the price that you've been offered. There's no, there is no that the system wouldn't benefit from an oracle in that situation.
Thanks so much. So someone just commented on our announcement here and said, why just get Chainlink, right? Like it's that simple, just get Chainlink. Why? One, you're speaking about that reliance, right? So I don't think they have been exposed to any sort of manipulations and things of that sort. But if they are the most reliant at the moment, why don't we see more using Chainlink oracles? In your opinions, is it there's a reason for that, no? If it can possibly avoid some of these oracle attacks.
Well, Chainlink doesn't support Chainlink doesn't support everything, and even then, like a lot of these tokens are only liquid in DeFi. And so just because the price is being, delivered via Chainlink doesn't mean that it's any less susceptible to attack. I think where Chainlink really excels is delivering, price information from the blue chips, right? Things like ETH and Bitcoin and other really big high volume tokens. And this is because the liquidity for those tokens and the amount of volume that you see on centralized exchanges is far greater than what you see in DeFi. And so the price data that you can get from that aggregation is just going to be more reliable. So if there's something weird on one exchange, then it will kind of be offset by the consensus data that you get from comparing all exchanges to each other. But if the only exchanges available are the ones on chain, then you're no better off getting that data delivered via Chainlink than just reading it directly from those smart contracts. And someone might say, yeah, but you can Chainlink can implement something like a moving average, or it can change the way that it aggregates stuff. But you can do all of that at the smart contract level anyway. So it's not really necessary to use Chainlink in that respect. It could be that there are other checks and balances in place, and I know that there are in some situations to sort of detect what would be considered a deliberate or malicious change in token prices. But the risk that you run there is that sometimes it's not malicious and it's not deliberately to liquidate someone, and the market really is just moving that quickly. In which case the things that are put in place to try and dampen volatility and not liquidate people prematurely can also mean that the protocol takes on more risk and doesn't liquidate people fast enough. So there's really no way out of it. And it's not like by implementing Chainlink you're suddenly safe. It's a problem that is at the data level, right? It's the actual place where the prices are determined, not the method of how that price data is delivered that determines the risk. So reading it directly from the AMM or getting Chainlink to read it from the AMM and then tell you what it is, the risks are the same.
Got it. Thanks so much. Hopefully that answered their question well enough, and I'm sure it did. Sophie, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. I kind of wanted to shift. We have about 15 minutes left.
Yeah, I think I agree with Mark. So Chainlink couldn't solve everything. It's the price. This one thing is the price is based on the historical price. So it's like a scala price, which doesn't consider the current liquidity over the market of the assets. So if for those assets that has less liquidity flow in the market, this kind of assets could be easily be targeted on the price manipulation. But if you still provide a price based only on the Scala data and didn't consider the actual liquidity that flow in the market, it definitely doesn't reflect the actual fact of the market. So which means I don't think the oracles is doing is some parameters needs to pass to feed the price, is there any price impact this kind of the parameter to feed the oracle to help them to provide the actual reflection of the current market situation to avoid the cases of liquidity manipulation.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so I did want to take the last maybe 10 minutes or so. I know that the call was mostly focused on OEV. We did mention sandwich attacks a little bit earlier. Mark, you had just released an article that you had written, and I thought, kind of, who better to maybe speak to a little bit about it with other than Sophie, right? So maybe you can, I'll pin it to the top. Maybe if you want to introduce it a little bit, give us a high level overview.
Yeah, certainly. So one of my colleagues, Stefan Loesch, recently wrote an article about sandwich attacks. And there was a paragraph in it that I thought that I would that I wanted to expand on a little bit and do a little bit of analysis. But then I decided that I think it would be better to just write a full article about it. And so yeah, it's exclusively about sandwich attacks and how to actually think about them. So the article is, I think, at least in the first half, is exactly what you would expect. I sort of just go through the a typical example of a sandwich attack, how it's performed, like the front running part, the letting the user's trade happen, and then the back running part, and then having a look at what what value the attacker won, and what the overall financial impact was on the user who was being attacked, on the victim. But then the second half of the article, I've gone to the effort of, I think, providing to my knowledge, the first mathematical description of what I would consider to be an optimal sandwich attack. So how to get the every last way of value out of exploiting someone. I do make the claim that I think there's probably no risk to exposing this information because the people who would weaponize it already have. We know that people like Jared from Subway, for example, have an extremely efficient sandwich bot, and so I doubt that there's anything that I've included in that article that that people like him aren't already aware of. But for people that are already very familiar with sandwich attacks, at least conceptually, I do also provide a new perspective on them, where we create a slightly different situation where we say, you know what, there's too many there's too much sort of rigmarole in performing a sandwich attack, and we can simplify the process just by stealing a certain amount of money from the user, increasing the trading fee on the pool, and then swapping what little tokens they have left on the pool with an increased fee. And what's interesting about that example is that it ends up financially exactly the same as the actual process of performing the sandwich attack. And I think, for a lot of the feedback that I've received from people that have read it is that they didn't realize just how severe a sandwich attack actually is, right? And in the example that I provide there, I think we're swapping something like $40,000 on a pool with $2 million worth of liquidity. And sure, that's a large trade, but would you expect that you're going to lose like 10% of your trade value or 20%? Because it's actually closer to like 60% of the trade value gets siphoned by the attacker, which is huge. And then, yeah, the last part of the paper, like I said, is basically the full algebraic proof for how to determine the optimal front running size, which is the thing that determines the profits that the attacker obtains from the user. Now, there's the article ends with sort of two challenge questions, because the resources that are provided there, both an interactive Desmos graph, for example, and also the equations that I've written down, are actually sufficient to show that there is also a certain trade quantity that cannot be sandwiched, right? That will only cause the sandwich attacker to lose money. There's also, given a certain trade quantity, a specific pool fee that you could use that would also completely prohibit sandwich attacks. And I think that this is interesting information, and it wasn't clear to me before I performed the analysis that these kinds of variables could be determined algebraically. Like, once you get up to a degree 5 polynomial, the things become completely unsolvable, at least symbolically. But luckily, in this case, it actually stops at the fourth degree, so you can actually determine all of these things symbolically and get infinitely precise results out of it. So yeah, it's for people that are familiar with sandwich attacks and are sort of consider themselves well versed on that topic. I still think that the novel perspective regarding the redundant steps and creating a new situation that achieves exactly the same financial result will be interesting. And even then, I'm not sure that any of these equations have been published anywhere before. And so what I'm really trying to do is to kind of bring a little bit more attention to the devastation of sandwich attacks and just how I'm not sure what the right word is, because I think rent extracting doesn't really do it justice. It really is kind of theft on a massive scale. And if you have a look at Nate actually just posted to his Twitter a new report from Glassnode that shows that I think almost 2/3 of all volume on Uniswap now is sandwich attack related, and then another 10% is exclusively arbitrage. So it is it's a pervasive problem. This isn't sort of a weird curiosity or something. This is a cancer that's absolutely killing the industry, and I want to spend some time writing about it and getting people thinking about it.
Sophie, I saw you throwing up your 100 emoji. We have about 5 minutes left. If you want to add to it, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, it's amazing what Mark has read the paper, and I'm definitely going to read it very carefully and smoothly. But there's something that I want to add is Mark mentioned about the optimal firm running amounts. I think that's something that the sandwich bot is struggling doing, is to make sure they input the perfect amount of the tokens to generate the most of the profits. But as far as I noticed, most of the sandwich bots couldn't generate the optimal profit. So there's still like some of the space left for some arbitragers go to pick up the left of the profit. So what currently most some builders would do is, because builders could see those sandwich bundles. And if those sandwich bots didn't generate the optimal profit, the builders will run like arbitrage bots to generate the rest of the profit. That's something that I have noticed, and I think this kind of information that I want to share. And also Mark has mentioned this huge amount of the volume in Uniswap is from the sandwich attack that we have been also kept monitoring on the sandwich data as well. And it's just like one data I want to share is we keep monitoring what Jared is doing, but you need to know Jared sends bundles like every 2 blocks or even like every 1 block. So that means every 2 block has a transaction from Jared. And Jared is doing only in Uniswap with 2 and Uniswap with 3. So that what does that mean? Like, so it's like Jared is conducting the sandwich attack very frequently. But if you are trading meme coins or especially like the PP coins in Uniswap, you need to be very cautious of being sandwiched by Jared. That's the tokens, that's most favorite tokens from Jared. Yeah, that's 2 informations I want to add after Mark.
Yeah, actually, Sophie raised a really good point there, which is that so the analysis that I provide in the article is absolutely not the end of the story. I plan to prepare some more of these and hopefully put together a fairly authoritative body of work on the topic. But yeah, the analysis that I provide assumes that everything that the attacker gets during the front run that they immediately backrun with everything that they bought, which is a totally legitimate way to perform a sandwich attack. However, there are more complex ways of sandwiching a trade that I haven't analyzed yet, but will eventually, such as piping together a sandwich attack with an arbitrage trade, such as removing liquidity as part of the sandwich, which is a something that characterized the early days of Polygon and Binance Smart Chain, Avalanche, and these were really devastating. So one of the take-home messages from this new analysis is that the more shallow the pool's liquidity, the easier it is to extract value from the trader. So if you have access to a very large amount of the LP tokens, for example, like if you're launching a new meme coin, for example, and you are the project founder and you can add you're the only person that's currently holding any liquidity, you can very easily remove liquidity during part of the sandwich and then add liquidity back at the end, and it's a much more efficient way to sandwich someone. There are also ways that you can bait a fairly large transaction. So obviously, the larger the user's trade, the more profitable it is to sandwich it. And so one of the things that I remember paying attention to towards the end of last year was that there were these liquidity pools springing up that would create a very imbalanced pool with respect to the rest of the chain, and then they would wait for someone to try and transact with them, and then they would pool liquidity, sandwich them, and then put liquidity back. This was extremely common on Avalanche, for example. So there are it's a complex topic, and there's a lot more to be explored. This is just it's not even a rough first attempt. I consider it to be, a pretty thorough introduction to the topic. But yeah, absolutely, it's chapter one of many.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We are at the top of the hour. I just want to thank Mark and Sophie again for joining us. Thank you to all of the listeners. I want to maybe apologize to one of our listeners. I think maybe it wasn't exactly clear why oracles aren't necessary in the carbon design. So I would love to invite you and everyone else here to join our Telegram. It's CarbonDeFi.xyz. Maybe we can elaborate a little bit more on that. Would love to explain why they're not, but also how we're talking about sandwich attacks, how carbon is resistant to sandwich attacks. And Sophie, I believe that you're going to be a guest on another panel in maybe 3 hours from now, 2 hours from now.
Yeah, 2 hours. I'm going to talk about the MEV there.
Awesome. Okay. So if this is a topic that interests you, you want to hear more from Sophie, definitely go ahead and tune into her next Twitter Spaces. That's going to be in 2 hours. I'm sure they can get the information from the EigenFi Twitter. And yeah,
yes.
Perfect. Like I said, I invite everybody to join us on Telegram. Again, it's CarbonDeFi.xyz. And if our listener is maybe more comfortable, you can DM me also. I invite everybody to do so if you want to know more, learn more about carbon. And Mark, like you said, this sandwich attacks are a complex problem. And for everybody here, definitely recommend looking at the pinned tweets, what Nate had just pinned in terms of the 60% of uni volume being MEV sandwich attacks, and Mark's article as well. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you once you kind of dig into the depth that he has. Thank you guys again so much, Sophie and Mark. It's always a pleasure having you guys on. And thank you again to all of our listeners.